Hello, my name is Aaron Cavanagh and I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of Post-Burnout.com. Post-Burnout.com is a culture website dedicated to venerating burnt-out artists the world over. This is our website's podcast where we publish full-length recordings of our interviews, which are sometimes the unedited versions of our site's articles and at other times are exclusives. If you're a returning listener, thank you for coming back, and if this is your first time listening, thank you for checking us out. We hope you enjoy and consider subscribing, giving the episodes a thumbs up if you're on YouTube, or giving it a rating if you're anywhere else. It really helps us out. Thank you. Right, in this edition of PostBurnout.com interviews, we have another double bill with the connective tissue between these two interviews being two established musicians coming together to create an experimental pop project. In part 1, we talk with Jem Wood of Tattle Tale fame and Ted Chen of CMYK fame on their new Californian-based synthpop duo GEMZ, their debut EP See the Future, meeting in a Seattle video store in the early 2000s, how the longevity of their careers gives them perspective on their older releases, and why this project has rejuvenated them. In part 2, Julie Hough of HAVVK fame and Stephen McHale of BARQ fame discuss their new alt-pop duo PostLast, their debut EP Pull Me Into the Open Sea, which was released today, how writing for this band differs from their other projects, advice for younger musicians, and much, much more. Hey, how's it
Hello.
going?
How are you?
I'm very well. It's nice to meet both of you.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Morning. I'm great. How are you doing, Aaron?
I'm doing great. It's very nice to talk with you guys. Yeah, I'll try not to take up
You.
too much of your time, man.
Thanks for having us. We appreciate it.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
no, no.
If I give like a bit of a guess a cliff notes in the background of this project, I mean, and correct me if I get anything wrong here, but um, I believe Ted, you'd moved to Seattle in the mid 90s and were working at a video store, and that's how you got to know Jen back then. Is that correct so far?
Just it was more the early 2000s, but
Okay.
so just kind of post grunge kind of blow up. But yeah, I mean, we've known each other for quite some time now.
What was actually going on musically at that time?
Oh, I mean, a lot of the what was there like post-punk revival. I was into a lot of like electro pop at the time too. A lot of I was actually listening to a lot of IDM.
Okay,
So
yeah.
not EDM, but IDM, right? So like Aphex Twin,
Yeah.
Oval, Finesse, yeah, and then just kind of a lot of indie electronic was coming through, so I was kind of focused on that as well. So like, oh man, who was there? Like Moom, and
Mm,
like
yeah, really good.
Cornelius was like mind blowing seeing him for the first time. Um, Man, actually, that's a great question because that was a lot of like formative stuff was happening then.
Yeah. For yourself, I mean, how did you kind of get into music, Ted? Because obviously I know, Jen, you were working, well, actually, would Tattletale still been active at that time?
No, no, no. Tattle Tale was a like a mid '90s band. We existed maybe for like, I mean, so 4 years, 3 or 4 years. But by the time I met Ted, I was already, in my solo music career. But
But yeah, I mean, so I guess originally I actually moved to Seattle to kind of loosely start a band with some friends from college. Like we all went to school at Washington University in St. Louis, and then I took a year um, after school to kind of live in Taiwan for a while. And and then yeah, got in touch with some friends. They're like, oh, like one of them I had already was already living in Seattle, and then two of us were like, oh, let's just go move there. And so we got there um, to loosely start a band. But like I think the big impetus was actually from when I was working at the movies at the video store. And you know, Jen and I kind of talk about this, but like ironically, everyone there um, had their own bands.
Yeah.
So like I got introduced to like the Seattle indie scene, music scene from there, and then that kind of like I don't know, yeah, just kind of got me into inspired by people, and actually, I mean, kind of a personal note, but like one big impetus was actually around that time my father passed away just from a random accident. And
Sorry to
so it
hear.
was a way for, yeah, but it was a way for, for me to kind of like process that emotion and energy and kind of like let it out and express that. So that really kicked things off as well. Um, but I'd been into music for, and studied and kind of like did a bunch of stuff when I was younger. So I was versed in a lot of instruments before then.
And then, from my understanding, then, Jen, you moved to California to work with the band White Light, if that's correct. And then, if I understand, then Ted, you sent a remix, I guess, of one of Jan's songs, "Fell in Love." So, is that all correct again so far?
So this was before we moved to California. We were in Seattle at the time,
Okay,
and
my
I think
chronology's
Jen.
all screwed up.
Oh
No,
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 it's
you're doing great. No, like actually everything you're saying is accurate. It's just a couple. No,
Just not in
like
the right order.
no, 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 you're doing great. No, actually, it's like really close. It's really close. Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
but
Like
it's
fell in
there.
love with
You
Seattle.
gotta ask, or else you never learn.
Exactly. No, thank you. I mean, yeah, appreciate you doing the research. But yes, fell in love happened in Seattle, right? And then, Mhm.
But yeah, so I mean, that was like I think that was around 2014, 2015.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I just reached out to Jen because I heard that song and I was like, wow, this is a rad song. And in my head, I was like, oh man, like I wonder what, I could hear other instrumentation behind it and kind of remixes. And it was around the time when I was in other bands and they had kind of winded down. And so I was in this space and I don't know, for some reason I was in sort of like this remixy mindset. So I was hearing songs and I was like, oh, what else could I do with them? So I reached out to Jen, did that. And that was really fun. And then from there, we sort of like organically grew some more kind of collaboration together. Um, and then that's when she came over and we got to kind of like listen to some of her voice notes and um, yeah, and then yeah, that's where a lot of this came from actually.
Jim, when it came to your solo work, actually, were you working with external producers or were you self producing?
I was working with certain producers. Actually, I my favorite producers in Seattle is Sean Simmons. I worked with him on my solo albums at a really cool studio in Seattle called Studio Litho, which ironically Stone Gossard from Pearl Jam. It was his studio, but it was this really modest, really cool, tiny little studio. And so Sean, yeah, I worked with Sean quite a bit, and you know, Sean is known for, he got lucky and became friends with the Head and the Heart. So he's actually produced like several of their albums now, which is awesome. He's a wonderful person, really great to work with. So I was working with Sean quite a bit. I had worked with other producers as well. But yeah, I mean, between when I moved to California in 2018, yeah, the last producer I worked with was Sean, and then Ted. Now Ted's the new producer. So yeah.
Yeah. And actually, it's a really great collaboration because I think it really is like I think it's a very distinctive sound. I mean, were you kind of was that something that you wanted to kind of have uh Ted's contributions to be acknowledged in terms of starting it as another side project versus say just releasing it under your own name?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just ready to explore, experiment. I think that, I had been writing sort of the indie singer-songwriter stuff for a while. And so I was just very excited to try different styles, like do something new, different, also just representative of just who I am as a person now. I've changed. And we change. Hopefully we evolve and change. So I'm not the same person I was in 2014, right? So, you know, and then the universe just honestly was just so, it just feels like fated, that Ted and I's paths kept like bumping into each other, like just very organically. And yeah, and then, I mean, the minute we started working together, I just knew there was something magical and special about the way that we collaborate. Uh, so yeah, it's been really fun, really fun.
Yeah, I think the timing, especially for this, like like Jen said, we've been on our own personal journeys, and a lot of transformation has happened. And especially I was excited to talk with you on this because of the themes for your interviews,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like post burnout. Like actually,
Yeah.
to be honest, like in the middle of like producing this album, I was experiencing my own personal burnout
Yeah.
as well. So, I think it's like a lot of that energy was really kind of informed a lot of sort of what we created together as well.
Yeah, yeah. I also same. I think I definitely had post burnout too. I mean, know, Ted, it takes a pretty special person, I think, to be able to be transmuting and transforming my song ideas into what Ted is making them become. Um, he has had a lot of work cut out for him. It's a lot. It's a lot. So yeah, the burnout is it's a real thing. It's going to happen. But that's why it's like also important to remind one another to take good care of ourselves. Self care. I always say to Ted, like, put yourself first. Always,
Yeah.
always, always, always. Music and work and business and that is all secondary. You know.
No,
Yeah, I
totally.
mean, I
Sorry.
mean, I think it was like it, are the places that we were in life kind of complemented each other in a
Mhm.
way that like we both were looking to sort of transmute
Mm.
our own energies. Like for me, like I mean, just a couple of months ago, I'd left a job where I was like a product designer at Microsoft, and I'd been there for 14 years. And at some point last year, at some point in time, I realized that like it wasn't serving me
Mhm.
in the ways that I needed to, or it wasn't sort of like feeding my energies in the way that I needed to, right? And so I like in the middle of sort of that like realization, right? The burnout, going through all the classic things, burnout, anxiety, depression, all of this stuff, like trying to refine your way again. Like
Yeah.
this music project was like, boom, it was just like this little beacon of light in the middle of
Yeah.
this, right? And being like, okay, I feel completely lost and disoriented in so many ways, but at least
Mhm.
there's this.
It's the North
And at
Star.
least it is in a way, yeah, like at least Jen and I can kind of like funnel our energies and our, I don't know, like our hopes and dreams and wishes, right? Our optimism um, into this. And so that was a way to sort of just kind of like balance out and kind of reorient, I don't know, at least for me, like life at the time.
Mhm. Mhm.
I probably could be reaching a bit here, but I just think it's interesting because, like, I think sometimes you can get like stuck in a rut like that, where even though like something is kind of suboptimal, it's still familiar and it's secure. I guess like working in a job, even if you feel it doesn't kind of like create like it fulfills you. I don't know. There's just like a comfort in kind of the familiarity of the day to day, I guess. Do you find like kind of actually through creative art, that kind of widened your perspective of life, and did it have any kind of influence on some of your life decisions beyond the band, or again, am I just reaching here?
Mm.
No, no, I think absolutely that like, you know, uh, I think creativity, art has always been sort of a refuge, right, in ways when like, there's like this joke, and I'm sure you've heard it, but like, it's like, find the thing that you love to do most in this world and then spend the rest of your life doing it on nights and weekends,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And honestly, there's a lot of like, there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of honor in being able to find that balance, right? Um,
Totally.
uh, and like, but for me, I just realized that like with this particular sort of phase that I was in with this job, that like I wasn't finding that balance. And so for me, this like, yeah, this the music thing and the arts, any kind of like creative pursuits became sort of like a way to sort of like I said, the kind of reframe, recontextualize sort of the stuff that you're putting energy into, right? And so it helped. It really did help to reframe. Okay, there are other sort of avenues that you could pursue in life. The job thing is great, and like it's nice to have like a cushy paycheck and a lot of like all the stuff taken care of, right? All the good insurance and nice things that kind of like all the comforts and the security of that. Um, but this I think this music project actually helped to kind of like uh, was definitely a contributing factor to kind of like make that leap to
Mhm.
change. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, I mean, and it's been, Ted and I have been well, we've known each other for about 20 years, but then through working together musically, he's become a really good friend of mine, and it's been absolutely so awesome and so beautiful to just witness your transformation, Ted. Like the Ted has been like making big moves, big changes. I mean, major life changes, right? Like, and
I
God,
mean,
you know what
Chen
I mean?
has as well. I mean,
Yeah, so
you're,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, whatever. You know
It's
what?
good not to stagnate.
I don't need to talk about me very much. I really don't. It's nice to listen.
No, we do.
No, 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 it's good. It's good. I'll just, it keeps me more mysterious. If people don't know, then it's more mysterious,
Yeah.
right? She didn't talk at all during the interview. Wow, she has a mystique. I just, um, but yeah, I mean, GEMS is working with Ted has been a huge catalyst for me as well. Personal growth, transformation, spiritual growth, mental, emotional healing, wellness, everything. Music is a tool. It's healing. It's transformative. It is one of the most powerful things that we have as humans that can actually change us.
Mhm.
It can change. It changes our brain chemistry. It changes how we feel. Right. So you can call music as a drug or music as medicine. So working with Ted has been life changing for me. It's been incredible, and he's a total genius. I call him the wizard. He's a wizard. I mean, I don't know how, you know what I mean, to take these voice memos that I send him, and sometimes I'm just literally like writing ideas. I improvise and I write ideas in the moment, kind of like a channel, and I just hit record. And I'll send, I've sent voice memos to Ted where it's like 10 minutes of me just kind of noodling around and then there's moments of silence, and then my dog barks, and then I get up to, go make some more tea, and then I come back and like I'm recording the whole thing. And I'm like, hey, Ted, okay, so here's like some new ideas. I'm always writing, always have ideas. Check out timestamp at 1 minute, 2 seconds, then fast forward to 3 minute, 40 seconds. Now, then pop up to about 8 minutes and 52 seconds.
Yeah, totally.
I haven't met anyone else. I mean, I know there's other artists that do this. But I have yet to meet one of them. Does it
You know, ironically, because what um, the work that I was doing at Microsoft was mainly product design, but it was also like for the last 3 or 4 years, I was primarily focused on user research.
Mhm.
And ironically, the skills that I was employing at user research actually like lined up perfectly with exactly what Jen was saying. I would conduct these interviews, and then I would go back and I would literally mark them per second, like 5 minutes, 27 seconds. This is the quote that came out that like was
That's
salient to
what I
whatever
do
we
with this
were doing.
website all the time.
Yeah. And so
Yeah,
it's
I'm
like,
like, good quote, good, I totally
exactly.
yeah.
agree.
And
Yeah.
so that in some ways, no, in many ways, like the the work that I was doing at work was like training to just
Hmm.
shut up and listen. Like that's the key thing was like, you know, and actually I think that actually kind of um that was also like a big change from being a producer and a musician in my 20s and 30s or early 30s to like now was that like back in the day I don't know, you're like you're just making stuff, but like I had a completely different mindset back in the day of like, like, oh, we're musicians. We have to be the artists. We have to be auteurs. We have to be the one kind of like stating the opinion, stating the sort of a thing. Whereas now, like, it's like, no, it's like, let the music be the music, be in service of the music, listen, like I said, shut up and listen to
Yeah.
what the music wants. So that's what I did with a lot of, with Jen and I, like, I'm listening to sort of what Jen's singing, of course, but also what does the music like behind that, like what does that want to be, right? And
Mm,
kind of like and being a producer in service of that.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
think it's I think production is kind of an extension of the creative arm of songwriting. That's how I've always felt. I think like different production can really alter the sound of a song and completely change the mode. I mean, in fact, I mean, I know you've worked with like remixes of your work and stuff. Like I think that kind of shows just like alternating the kind of BPM can really change the lyrical connotation of what's being said. It's very fascinating. I think, like even sometimes you hear people do like an acoustic cover of like I don't know, a hard rock song or something. It's just like it totally takes on a different meaning just based on the way it's sang. I mean, obviously, I mean, you guys are aware of this, but I was wondering, like, do you kind of like to listen to, say, for example, different remixes of the same song? Do you guys kind of like to listen to how other producers kind of work with the same artists and so on? Like, do you kind of enjoy kind of extrapolating that side of things to the production and the artists?
Mm, mm.
I mean, for sure. I
Yeah.
don't, in my mind, like, nothing's sacred as far as that's concerned, right? There's always room for like a reinterpretation of things, and like, I mean, I actually even practiced it like a little bit, like in my on one of my SoundCloud accounts. Like, I took Heart of Glass
Yep. The
and
Blondie song.
remixed that. Yeah, so the Blondie song, I remixed it. I actually pitched her voice down because that was around the time when everyone was like pitching voices, in
Right.
the whatever the 2015s or whatever.
Sure.
And I changed the key structure from major to minor. Um, and it came out like a completely different vibe.
Yeah.
And I love that when people do that, like, like take something and kind of like reinterpret the energy into something else. Like I'm always listening for that.
Mhm, mhm. Also, yeah, big fan of remixes. I really am so curious and intrigued with other artists' interpretations, and I think it's exciting and inspiring when someone can transform somebody else's song into something totally different, you know? Yeah, so yeah, definitely. I've got a lot of a lot of remixes and a lot of reimagined songs on my playlist. Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, and one other thing I wanted to ask, just kind of like, because as we were mentioned, like, you guys have kind of hop around a bit. Ted, if I'm correct here, I believe you moved from like Taiwan to New Jersey to Washington to California, and just kind of been sort of around the town a bit, I guess. I was wondering, does location kind of affect the music you make, the kind of sound you make, or does the location you're in have any kind of effect over the art you produce, I guess?
I think for sure. Uh, Point of clarification. Actually, like, so from Jersey, I actually spent most of my childhood in North Carolina,
Okay.
and then yeah, but then yeah, location definitely does matter. Like, Seattle definitely had an energy. Um, I'd say though, like, it's not like it's like a one-to-one reflection of the vibe. Like, I was trying to write like, yeah, I was trying to write like dancier stuff in Seattle because it was so gray, and there was
Right.
like a serious kind of
Mhm.
a vibe there at the time, and I was like, no, like I need a balance of that, right? So that kind of informed it in a way.
Hmm.
um Now I'm in California. You can you can see it's kind of like sunny, beautiful Northern Cali.
Yeah, it's
um
pretty scenic.
Yeah, I'm in this ridiculous little spot here, but I maybe it is balanced. Like, I think a lot of the stuff that we are writing though, like, because my wife and I have traveled for the past couple of years too, and for a lot of the time we are actually in Joshua Tree,
Okay.
and so the kind of like vast landscape desert kind of informed sort of
Hmm.
a lot of the production as well.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah.
Mhm. That's a great question. That's a great question. I completely agree. I'm just going to jump in real quick because, since living in California, I'm surrounded by palm trees and sunshine, and I love it. And I think that has definitely influenced and inspired me to write more dancey dance pop music, happier vibes, like more lighthearted, transmuting sad songs into happier songs. Seattle is a very gray, rainy, it can get very depressing there. So that's a really great question. I think definitely for me, it's influenced me. And yeah, it's you think about like the music that's come out of Seattle, I don't know, the grunge scene. It's like a lot of dark, heavy, sad. And why is that? Because Seattle's very gray and rainy. It'll rain for weeks on end. And then here we are in California, and it's like sunny, twinkle, happy, like let's go ride our bicycles with the streamers and the bicycle handles and let's go like to the beach and hang out on the sand and like put our feet in the ocean and it's like yeah, it'd be interesting, you know what I mean? So yes, it's true. It's true. It's true.
My kind of I guess stereotypical understanding of Californian weather as someone who's ever been there is that it is kind of a place sort of devoid of seasons. Would that be correct or
Well, California is a big old state, so
fair
you can
enough?
it runs the gamut. I think Southern Cali is definitely a little bit more consistent and stable. So that's where you get the no seasons because it's like
Yeah.
mid 70s all year
Yeah.
long, and people are in sweaters when it dips into like the mid 60s. Um, but where I am in Northern California, I think we get it's more four seasons. Like I don't get we don't get snow where I'm at, but I
Mhm.
think when you go a little bit more interior and the elevation kind of gets a little higher, then for sure you get snow in all the four seasons. So, um, but the reason why we're here is mainly for the sun. Like I think the difference is in Seattle, like there's a lot more. It's not necessarily rainy, but it's just gray.
Yeah.
Aaron, I don't know where you are.
Yeah.
From Dublin, Ireland.
Okay, so it's probably similar
Yeah.
actually. Like
It
like
actually is,
y-
yeah.
Are you
That's
literally
right
in
there.
Dublin?
Yeah, yeah, I'm right now,
what
yeah.
time is it there right now?
It's 6:28.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
too
Oh,
bad.
I want to go to Ireland someday. Oh, well, obviously my name's Jennifer, so
Yeah.
I've got a little bit of Irish in my family for sure. Oh, that's so cool.
Um, well, I guess I'll try and think about too much of your time. I mean, it's very nice talking with you guys. I just want to plug the new EP that's coming out. It's called See the Future. It's on October 22nd. It's day I haven't. It's very like I don't know. It's sort of your first I guess long form I guess content because obviously you've had singles out. Younger was in January. That was kind of the debut to the band, and then Psych Stuff's with me in September. Um, I really love them, not just being polite or encouraging or anything like that. That was really great. I was wondering if maybe you could just like talk a little bit about kind of I guess the theme of the EP and kind of what brought it about and generally just for you guys, I mean, like how do you find that the work in Jams kind of differs from the other projects you've been involved in, whether solo or whether parts of bigger acts?
Mm,
I'll let Jen start.
mm. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, the See the Future EP has been a really long process, to be honest. And what I love about that is that Ted and I share a similar vision in terms of never rushing the process. So, these 5 songs we've really carefully crafted. We've taken a long time. We've probably spent too much time, but that's okay. No such thing. Um, and I mean, Honestly, for me, these songs, they feel like a batch of songs about healing and transformation. And yeah, like that, and then see the future actually a line, it's a lyric out of a song. The last song on the EP is called Humans. And I got the name for the EP from that song, See the Future. So, sending out this message, that's like the closing song of this little mini album of wanting to just share my love, my hope, like my light with people, to be like, hey, you know what? Like, whatever you're going through, you're going to get through this. Look to the future. Do not look back. The past is in the past. So, yeah, these songs, I feel like every song just has like a special little healing message, not a
I
little.
totally, it's a very hopeful record, I think.
Oh, thank you. That's what I want. That's what we want. I mean, that's why I do what I do. I've been thinking about like why am I returning to music again, Like what's making me come back to it? And really I just I want to share my story so I can help other people, So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's definitely like a s- an EP of like celebration and empowerment.
Yeah.
Um,
Time.
like I wrote in like a little info blurb about see the future, like the meaning of the title. It was like the first lyrics in the EP is I was looking back, right? So it's in some ways it's like acknowledging all the stuff, past, present, future, and
Yeah.
just sort of like claiming it for yourself, right? And like we've just talked about, like we put a lot of like our own sort of like personal energy in this, so it's very lyrically it's very personal, but also like musically, the production is very like I mean put a lot of like sort of like I said, transmuted a lot of sort of whatever I was going through into this. And then as far as working together, like for sure could not have written this on my own at all because it required Jen's energy. It required where she was at to kind of inform like how I wanted to like respond or add to or whatever. So like I think it really it created a much deeper kind of like richer, broader kind of bandwidth of experience in this production. Um, yeah.
Mhm.
Actually, one thing, Jan, I just wanted to ask, kind of, you were talking about kind of how this EP was sort of based on healing. I was wondering, like, for someone like yourself who has the kind of musical longevity that you have, where you have like music kind of spanning over, 25 years, or in that avenue, do you often find the kind of music you're producing now is in any way a response to the music you were making then, in the sense that I don't know, perhaps back then you were questioning things that now you feel you have more of a grasp on, or anything like that?
That's a great question. I'm sure there are elements of that. I think it wasn't necessarily intentional, but absolutely sort of a response or a continuation. I feel like actually the first song on our EP is called Karma, and it was accidental. I didn't plan this out, but Karma really does feel like it could be a continuation from Wilderness, as if like my last album was Wilderness, and then that chapter, was like a chapter in the story, and then you turn the page to the next chapter and you open up Karma.
Yeah.
You open up the song Karma. So, and even what Ted did, how he produced Karma and what he added to that song, um, there's this congruent vibe between Wilderness and Karma, and that, I mean, so yeah, I do think there is some connection for sure. I think that um, like I said before, my desire to embark in a new realm, in new territories musically, is representative of how I've changed since my previous releases, right? So definitely Um, yeah, I mean, uh, yeah, I would say that actually too, like, these songs, this is like the first time that I've shared more of myself in terms of like a spiritual way. And that's a big change. Like, I've kept that very quiet. It's very sacred. It's a very personal thing, and I've also been through a lot of spiritual growth. So that also is like a response and sort of a, like looking back to my older stuff, all the things that I didn't know because I was younger, I just didn't know. Or, the ways in which from my older material, looking back, like, oh gosh, like me not seeing how I was really stuck in a pattern. I was so stuck in a cycle and I just couldn't see it. And then here we are now, right? So part of our process as we evolve and grow is like that grace and that forgiveness and that compassion for our younger self, right?
No, absolutely. I think like everything you're saying like makes total sense. And I think I relate to it perhaps because I'm getting a bit long in the tooth myself. I'm looking back to kind of certain perspectives of my own life and kind of thinking of similar things. And one thing I sort of wonder is like I still am quite trepidatious. I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I'm quite trepidatious sometimes in terms of making any kind of declarations
Yeah, yeah.
of life advice because I feel like again like to some degree kind of life itself kind of humbles you in a way I feel, and you kind
Mm.
of realize like there's so many questions that you just never really have answers to. I think there's humility in admitting that. Is that ever something that you're kind of fearful of in terms of like an audience perceiving something and maybe taking it as gospel and kind of living on it, or and maybe I don't know, like maybe there's an uncertainty as to your own kind of level of commitment to the ideas you're expressing, or is that just a me issue?
Oh, well, it's not just a you issue. I think that's a human issue that we all go through, right? And like I want to have these conversations. And it's really cool that you shared that, because this is why these songs are exist. We're sharing these songs so hopefully people start talking about this stuff. I'm not. I don't know if I heard you right, but I mean, I think I kind of heard a little bit of a question of you asking me, perhaps, am I concerned about how people may perceive or judge or take, like, take every word I sing and for them to adopt that as like that's like that's the truth. That is the only
Yeah,
way. That is, or and
that's exactly what I'm asking you.
okay, yeah, I have no concerns or no worries about how anyone interprets these songs, I think because I've been doing this for so long now, I've been playing music since I was 15. And one of the beautiful things about becoming older and wiser is that you just let people interpret things how they want to interpret them, and there's beauty in that. I want people to have that freedom, and I give that freedom to myself also, right? Like, I'm an ever changing, ever evolving human being. I have the desire to change, evolve, and learn. So I'm not going to punish myself or like be tough on myself as I learn and evolve and make mistakes, right? So, and hopefully that message comes through the songs too. It's like, hey, give yourself grace.
Yeah,
Mm.
totally,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think that does come true.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
I guess yeah, I guess I've pretty much kind of asked everything I have to ask. It was very nice talking with both of you guys. I guess the final thing I'll just ask, is there anything you guys would like to plug? Anything you guys would like to add? And obviously the EP comes out October 22nd. I'll try and have this to coincide with that. But beyond that, I mean, like, is there anything else you guys would like to talk about? Actually, I have one more question. Sorry, I just thought of it
Yeah.
now.
No, it's
Um,
great.
doing a project now, as you mentioned, you guys have kind of like matured and have life experience and have had success in other projects. I was wondering, like, how do you think the perception of being an artist now is compared to when you start doing music as a teenager?
Hmm.
If that's
I
too
mean,
lofty, I'm sorry.
I think it's like, I mean,
It's
you
a good
know,
question.
there's a lot of like access now, more so than there was before, right? To sort of like people and transparency to their processes, and a lot more like directness and immediacy, right? To artists and sort of what they're thinking. So I think and that changes the way that, artists maybe go about structuring their sort of like what they how they communicate to an audience. And so yeah, I don't know. Like I think it's like less about like a cult of personality and more about just like the richness in of a person. I think
Yeah.
Hmm.
that's how I see it now, right? It's like we get I feel like there's more permission now to kind of just be ourselves,
No, totally. I
as
think
well
there's
as
a lot more of
musicians.
it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think there's a lot more of an equal playing field, I think, between artists and fans. I think fans are seeing the kind of human side of it. I know, like, I know actually you guys like really keep up with kind of a lot of new art that's coming out too. Like, and I know you guys be aware, like, recently with like say Chaperone, Rome, for example.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have been very sympathetic to a lot of what she's saying, and I think that's like it's really great because I think with that kind of direct communication of just being able to upload directly to TikTok or to Twitter or to Instagram or whatever, and actually kind of talk to people sometimes this can be a bad thing, but sometimes people do feel they have a kind of personal connection with people in a way, and I think we do kind of see the human the kind of human experience of it all, even like seeing artists like for example transporting gear onto like an airplane and just like how tired they are at like getting a plane at like 9 in the morning or whatever and transporting all this gear. I think like we are seeing rather than just like the stage presence, the artist who's like fully prepared to put on a show, like that's what all we used to see, I guess. And I think now we're seeing kind of the whole enchilada, and we're realizing just how human I guess everyone is.
Hmm.
Well, it's, yeah, it's allowing. Oh, you go.
Oh yeah, no,
Sorry,
I
Scott.
love that. It's there is less and less gap, right? The more I love that. It's like and that's a really, Chapel Roan, for example, right? She just canceled a bunch of shows because she's mentally burned out. She got I don't know, I don't know if I'm misquoting this, but I think she got, her therapist diagnosed her with like severe depression. And so, the upside of what you're saying about this, Aaron, is that people are less and less sort of worshiping the artist. The more human element is discovered, then the less they're these like icons. They are these, these people on pedestals, right? And yeah, the perception has very much shifted. And also, too, you had mentioned something about younger. I felt like you said something about age, perception of age. Did you say something about like a younger?
Oh, I was asking, now what your perception of being an artist is compared to when you were a teenager.
Okay, that's what you're asking. Yeah. Oh, okay, okay, I see. I feel like that's a great question. I think that hasn't really changed. Like the core of my like calling and mission is still intact. I think that's for me, being an artist has been just a calling and just sort of this vehicle for healing myself, but also again helping others. Like that for me, it's just always goes back to that. I think I definitely, in my teenage years, I was feisty. I was very political. I was like overly opinionated. I was around a bunch of people who were overly opinionated, teenage stuff. But and now there's like a softness. There's, it's like I've experienced a lot of life. I've been through a lot, and to celebrate that too. It's like, yeah, like celebrate women artists who, aren't super young, but we have like wisdom. We have wisdom to share. We have ways that we can communicate through our music as well,
Yeah.
that are helpful and valuable. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
really
actually,
hope that there's more like room for humanity actually to show through in a lot of the art that we create. Like whereas before it was like how do I present this image of like being this cool mysterious kind of artist to now
right.
like let me show you, let me just live broadcast while I'm walking my dog,
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
totally.
And I think there's a lot of connective thread through that because it gives people permission to just kind of like, oh yeah, hey, they're doing that too, like
Yeah.
this is just life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We all put our trousers on one leg at a time.
Yeah.
I guess one other thing I just want to ask because it was just something that kind of interests me there, kind of on this topic of kind of humanization of celebrity, I guess. Do you find like people are getting critical of kind of idealizing celebrities? I was thinking of things like, for example, like the Me Too movement, for example, where you realize like a bunch of these like high profile kind of celebrities weren't the best people in the world, for example, or just like generally, like I think as we learn things about people's kind of personal lives, we see that, you know, they're everyone's kind of like everyone has faults. Obviously, something like Me Too is a big example, but no one is perfect. No one should be kind of like deified. Do you think the kind of deification, I guess, of celebrities is kind of fizzling out? And if so, do you think that's a good thing?
absolutely. Yeah, I do think it's a good thing, and I do think it's fizzling out. Yeah, yeah, we need to just start supporting one another to have more courage to just share vulnerabilities. And yeah, like you said, like nobody's perfect. We're all flawed. We're perfectly imperfect. I think, you know, what matters is like, what do we do? You know what I mean? It's like, okay, so some celebrity, really makes a huge mistake, like epic, major mistake, does something really awful, terrible. Well, what do they do after that? Right.
Mhm.
So it's like giving people the chance to change, the chance to heal, the chance to make amends. Like everybody deserves chances, everybody. And yeah, I think that is fizzling out for sure.
Perfect.
I did.
Um,
Yeah. I echo everything Jen just said.
it's really great talking with you guys. I've really enjoyed this. Yeah, and just is there anything you guys would like to add before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, we're working on a full-length album and some live shows, so keep an eye out for that. You can find us on our socials at GEMZ Songs on Instagram. And would just love to hear people, when they hear the music, just like how they feel about that. So, their reaction and response to that. So just hit us up if you have
Yeah.
thoughts and yeah.
Yeah. All
That's
lines of communication are open. Message us, like we'll message you back. We will interact, we want to like, yeah, show up for our listeners and people who are just curious, about our music or have questions. We really appreciate it. Also, I am starting an old school email list, a mailing list because of algorithms and major ticketing companies who've kind of been hoarding, kind of have this like stronghold on artists live shows and stuff like that. So please sign up on our email list too. Like send me a message, send us a message at GEMZ Songs, and it's GEMZ_songs. And yeah, if you want to be in the loop with what we're up to.
you definitely do. um,
Thank you
thanks
so
very
much.
much, guys.
You're
It was
very
really
welcome.
nice talking to you.
Pleasure to
Yeah.
meet you. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for the
Right.
chat. Thanks for taking the time with us.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank you
absolutely.
so much. Yeah, keep in touch. Send
Thank you
us a
very
message.
much.
Yeah, you're
Absolutely.
welcome. Okay,
Thank you.
cheers. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, Aaron, how's it going?
Hey, Stephen, how's it going? Can you hear me okay?
Yep, perfect. Not a bother.
Perfect.
All good with you?
Grand, man. I can hear you fine. It's nice to meet you.
Lovely, lovely. You too, you too. Julie just sent a message. She's stuck on a work call, but said she'll be here in 2 minutes.
No problem. Well, actually, let's start. I guess kind of we were background down while we wait in Julie.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, like obviously, I mean, you've been you're very busy. You have like
Yeah.
a lot of work going on, in terms of like I suppose mainly commission work if I'm correct. So I was wondering like how do you kind of I guess get time to kind of balance your commissions with kind of what you want to do creatively for your own kind of interest and input?
It's really hard. Like honestly, it's really hard finding the time to fit everything in. I find you just have to be like absolutely unrelenting in scheduling everything every week. You know, like I live by my Google Calendar. If I didn't have a Google Calendar synced to everything, I'd have no idea what I was supposed to be doing in the week coming up because it's all so tightly packed. You know, so that can be hard. Like it is hard. I think the thing that I find with the creative work that makes it easier is that I just really, really want to do it, you know? So, like, I'm looking forward to, like, okay, Tuesday morning, you know, 8 until after lunch, I'm going to be writing music and doing that. And I'm like, I'm ready for it. I'm geared up for it, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing, like being so busy with so much other stuff going on all the time, then you're kind of dying to get the, like, I really want to do that, you know, and work on that. So I think having that enthusiasm for it definitely that makes it easier to fit it in amongst everything because it's what I want to be doing the most and what I would like to be doing all the time. But yeah, it's definitely hard. It's really hard. Yeah.
Do you ever find like in the work you do in terms of the stuff you do commission influences what you do as just creating creative output, or do you find that the two are very distinctively detached?
No, they definitely influence. Yeah, and I'm kind of lucky with like uh lots of the say like session work and you know even just playing corporate events or weddings or whatever anything like that that's just guitar related. Like I've been really lucky that it's nearly always music I like, you know. So in that sense, it probably helps some of the creative stuff because I'm learning songs and really going deep into learning them and getting sounds together and things like that. And I think it probably aids, like in terms of time, it doesn't help it because you have to spend, you know, it takes up a lot of time and energy, you know, in terms of driving and late nights and things like that. But in terms of improving like knowledge of the instrument and knowledge of sounds and your ability to get those things and record them well at home and stuff like that, I think it helps. Because I do like I actually, you know, I'm a huge Radiohead fan and I play in a Radiohead tribute band. So like
Yeah,
that's quite like,
as
you
if you don't
know,
have enough going on.
yeah. Well, I think I actually, yeah, I'm in a Paul McCartney tribute band as well, and a Pearl Jam one sometimes, and a George Michael one, and then like 5 or 6 different wedding corporate event bands and duo stuff, and yeah, it's pretty crazy with music. I'm also mixing a television show, Bloodline Detectives, as well. So just trying to fit everything in. It's yeah, it's hard, but no, but I think in terms of musical stuff, I think it helps because it's just all broadening your knowledge and your technical and our ability, you know, learning all this
Yeah.
stuff.
What kind of what sort of like first get you into music, I guess? Were you always kind of a musical person growing up, or was it something that kind of came as you grew, or what was kind of your background, I guess?
There's loads of music in my family, like on both sides, from my mom and my dad. Lots of people working in the music industry, either as musicians or in the more business side of things or anything like that. There's so I definitely grew up kind of surrounded by it, and it definitely wasn't a surprise to anyone that I ended up going
Yeah.
in that direction myself. Like I actually, I was thinking about it recently because they just announced the gigs in Crow Park. But like I asked my mom for a guitar for my birthday because I wanted to learn Wonderwall.
Okay.
That was the like the moment where I was like, oh my God, I want to play that, you know. But like growing up, like everyone was listening to music loads, and I was just hearing it all the time. Lots of Beatles, Pink Floyd, all Rory Gallagher, all the classic
All
stuff.
the classics, yeah.
Yeah.
And then were you trying to like when you initially kind of got guitar, I mean you were mentioning Oasis there, were you trying to like kind of emulate a lot of those, because a lot of those musicians can be quite tricky, I think, like in terms of like initially trying in terms of like introducing yourself to an instrument, I guess trying to emulate them could be quite tricky. So um was music something that you found kind of you had initial kind of um grasp on, like in terms of the instrument, or was it something that took you a while to kind of, because like you're very versatile now. I mean, I'm not sure how many instruments you actually play, but again, did different instruments come more naturally to you than others, or did you always find that you had kind of a basic competency in anything you gave a shot at?
It's hard to know. It's hard to remember, really, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think it was, yeah, like I definitely felt like I could get things in lessons kind of quickly. But having said that, it's really hard starting off, you know. And I definitely fell prey to that and kind of lost interest for a while as well. You know, I wasn't like, I was probably obsessed with it initially and then kind of got bored of it and drifted away
Yeah.
and then came back to it as a teenager and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a tough thing for kids to learn. I used to teach, I taught for years, you know, in a school, and you see it with kids. It's really hard. You know, you're trying to make your hands into these strange positions, and it kind of hurts as well
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
first. You know, and and so
You forget like how kind of like how strings actually hurt at first until you get kind of
completely,
acclimatized to it.
completely,
Yeah.
yeah, and so kind of really admire anyone that sticks with it, especially um kids, you know, because like it's a tough thing to be like, right, I'm gonna go sit in a room by myself and really try and work on this thing that's painful, difficult, and is not showing a lot of rewards very quickly. You know, it
Yeah.
takes a lot. It's a lot of determination and yeah, enthusiasm for it. So like, sorry, to answer the question, I'm not really sure, to be honest, if I did initially have much aptitude for it or not. Hopefully I did, or you know, I probably should have done something else, but yeah.
Well, it certainly worked out.
Yeah.
And in terms of actually kind of doing music as a profession, when did that kind of begin for you?
Like kind of very young, to be honest. I think like I started gigging in, I grew up in Mayo in Westport, and I think we were kind of lucky there that a lot of the pub owners and stuff like that were very open to the idea of having underage people playing in in their establishments. So I don't think you would get away with it now, but I
Yeah.
think I was gigging in pubs and stuff when I was 16. Definitely like well into it at 17. Probably at 16. Um, playing like, you know, Rory Gallagher stuff and rocks, probably kind of generally that kind of thing. So that was definitely the death knell of me ever having a real job. When you're like, you know, I can go out and get paid to do this stuff every weekend, like, oh my God. So from then, because like I've been playing professionally since then, like as in terms of getting paid for it, you know.
Hmm.
There's been times when, say, I've had to do it like during the pandemic and stuff, I had to do other kinds of work, or you know, if I was saving to go somewhere, I'd get you know, a job for a certain amount of time. But there was always gigs throughout all that. So I'd say since then, pretty much.
Actually, is there any to kind of demystify, I guess, the beauty of the art, I guess, is there any kind of like real world trepidation in terms of putting your all into music in the sense that again you have to have, I guess, what we would call transferable skills in terms of being able to do part-time jobs here and there, like whether that's, you know, just some experience in say sales assistants or some experience in bartending or whatever we kind of associate with sort of I guess service work or however you want to put that. I mean, do you find that at such a young age, kind of putting all your aptitude into being a musician can kind of bite you in the ass later, or has that never proven?
It definitely could. Yeah, I think I studied music in college, you know, so then
Mm,
I guess that's a kind of a fail-safe thing of like you can always teach, you know, there's
yeah,
always there is always opportunities for that, whether it's like in a school or just private lessons or, you know, in a music school even. So I think um even from my own perspective, even at that age, there's no way I wouldn't have gone to college to do something like that, just because you kind of feel like that's definitely necessary, you know. But yeah, no, I remember I remember one of the lectures I had in college. I think it was Connor Guilfoyle. He's a drummer. Um, I think he said that, you know, being a musician is kind of recession proof because you never really earn any money anyway. And it was like, oh yeah, that's a good point. There isn't that much of a drop when a recession hits because you weren't getting it in the first place. But no, I think it's probably wise to have a bit of trepidation about it or a bit of realism about it. You know, I
Mm,
know like on your website, it's all about how people have to work as well as
yeah,
do their art. So it depends what you want. If you want to play your own music and do your own songs, you're going to need to earn money some other way initially, unless you're incredibly lucky or
yeah.
incredibly talented, you know. So I think it's definitely worthwhile as something to think about, like that you're going to need to pay the bills somehow. So whether that's through playing covers or teaching or having a separate job that's unrelated to music, if that works out for you too, that's great. But yeah, no, absolutely, there should be some trepidation about pursuing it because it can be tough to make enough.
One piece of advice I once heard, and I'd love to attribute it, but I can't actually remember who I heard it from. But it wasn't personal advice. It was like something I heard elsewhere. Was when you're a musician, try and pay close attention to the production of everything. Ideally, try and pay close attention to the production of everything because that's kind of like a skill set you can use after, say, your band splits. Or was that always something that was kind of taught to you to try and have that skill set as well?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely it was. I think I did a master's in Berkeley College of Music in their
Yeah.
Valencia campus, and it was all very, very much like, I mean, you kind of, you know, obviously you have instrumental lessons, and it's kind of assumed that you're well on top of all that kind of thing, and they're helping you along with it. But like in terms of production and business and everything, every other aspect that goes with it, you know, we learned a lot there, and it's all really useful and all 100% necessary uh, now when you're kind of expected to know how to do and to do all those things yourself, you know. So yeah, for sure.
You kind of see yourself as like perpetually freelancing, I guess, in the sense that you have to kind of constantly sell yourself in terms of like your skill set, in terms of what you can add to a given project. Because like looking at your portfolio, it's so diverse. Like in terms of like the bands you played with, in terms of the projects you've worked with, in terms of like post production sound and all these kind of different avenues. Do you find that you always have to kind of I guess never get complacent, or is it a case of the opportunities are coming to you? How do those kind of how's that work? I guess.
A lot of it comes through just people you know and friends, you know. Another great, like a piece of advice that stays with me always was in Valencia doing the masters, was that people are always, one of the lecturers said, people are always asking him, you know, how do you get to the next level? Like, how do you get up to play with these guys? Or how do you get to, you know, work towards playing, you know, with someone super famous or super successful or whatever it is? And he was like, you shouldn't, that's not the way you should think about it. You should approach every project you're involved with the same level of commitment and professionalism that you would if that super famous person you want to play with asked you to do it. Because all the people that are around you that you're working with and that are in the industry, if you fast forward 10 years, they turn into those people, you know, whether they're musicians or whether they're uh, promoters, you know, venue owners, record label people, or whatever. Everyone kind of advances to that point. So if you've been like super professional on top of your stuff and, you know, good to work with as a human as well, which is really important, uh, then you'll kind of get into those things as well, because all the people you know and work with will hopefully you'll continue to have a good relationship with, and that'll just kind of build naturally, you know.
Hi Julie. I was just getting a bit of Stephen's biography.
Cool. Yeah, I just kept quiet because I was like, this is interesting.
Well,
Actually,
we did an interview in Irish earlier on today, and I should have kept quiet because I made an absolute fool of myself
No,
with my
you're
forgotten
great.
Irish, and Julie nailed it. So
I didn't see Stephen thinks I nailed it because
well, you did so
I
much better than me.
it sounded like I did, but I know what I was saying and it wasn't right. Sorry for the delay there. The project manager was like, "Can I just keep you on for another few?" No.
All good.
Sure. Yeah, sweet. That definitely didn't even need to happen at that point. I'm just gonna, there's a lot of the kids are walking home from school, so
Perfect.
just need to close the window.
So I guess speaking of PostLast, and I mean obviously this your new project, it's kind of it was sort of first introduced to the world, I guess, in April with Connect 4 as the debut single. I know it's something that's been I know this project is something that's been kind of in the World War kind of clandestinely kind of being worked on for at least a year, if I'm correct, maybe more. Yeah, I was wondering, like obviously you guys know each other, if I'm correct, from you met when Hawk and BARQ, your previous band Stephen and your current band Julie were touring together across the UK. So you've known each other for a while now, and I was wondering like how this kind of project kind of came to be, I guess.
I think it starts with you, Stephen.
Well, yeah, it does. Sorry, I'm hogging all the talking here.
All right, I'll catch up.
Yeah, I kind of gone through a period like that coincided exactly with the pandemic of not having an original music project or a creative outlet, and I kind of hit a bit of a wall with music, and then I wasn't really enjoying it anymore, and I wasn't sure whether I wanted to do it anymore. You know, I was like, maybe it's better to put all this energy into something else, or what, you know. And that was on my mind for a while, like probably a couple of years nearly. And then suddenly just started to get a bit like, oh, maybe I should write something. You know, I will kind of want to, and I want to play. And I was like, but what am I writing it for? And I wasn't sure. And then when I thought, like, if I just write a song and imagine that a singer is going to be involved with it and see what happens. And then I wrote a couple. Once, as soon as I started, it was like, you know, loads coming out. And I sent on a couple to Julie because we knew each other from before, and because I was a big fan of Hawk and of Julie's singing, and we'd also worked together. Julie did the artwork for a couple of BARQ singles and stuff like that. So I knew she was like, oh, you know, multi-talented and all over it in loads of different kind of ways. That I was like, it could be great, you know, really cool. So I just sent her a message and was like, Julie, what do you think about, you know? And I had no idea, you know, whether or not she'd be into it or too busy, really, was probably my main thought.
I'm going to be honest, I definitely was too busy.
You definitely were, but fair play to you. You said yes anyway.
I'm really glad I did it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we had like opposite pandemic experiences where I was just like, right, what 18 projects can I be doing at the same time? But in
that was
that
a good way to spend that time, though.
Yeah, but in that way, I kind of had this like, I really felt like I was riding a wave of like I had lots of irons in the fire at the same time. And we got around to writing, and it was really like, I didn't have this kind of like preconception at all of what it could be. I was really like free flowing and free thinking in terms of listening to what you'd sent over and being like, how would I respond to this vocally? And it was a lovely state of mind to be in, because I found myself getting into these kind of like stream of consciousness states of mind when I would listen. And also because your musical thinking is so different to mine, I had to just not, if I tried to understand the chord progressions too much, it just it wouldn't work. It was more like how would I organically respond to this?
Yeah, no, I think I think one thing that is that the music kind of evokes, at least for me, and I think this is something you see reflected in kind of the music videos you guys put out is again, like obviously Julie, you be kind of coming at it also from kind of a visual aspect too, and there is, I think there's like this real I don't know. There's this kind of organic aesthetic that kind of formulates in your brain as you listen to the music. As soon as you hear the music, you kind of like, were you thinking of those aspects too, or was that something that kind of came later in terms of like, you know, the aesthetics of say a music video, like the Connect Four video, that kind of seems to replicate kind of not even necessarily old advertisements, but it kind of reminds me more so of the old kind of the actual kind of images you'd get on like old board games of like the happy family and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which just has like a very distinctive aesthetic to it. I don't really know how to put it into words, but it is kind of like something that I think as soon as you see it, you know it, you know.
I think when we started working on the songs, even though the visuals obviously came maybe a year later when we were talking about putting them out, they already had a very textural quality. Like there was this very layered and this kind of fuzzy quality that almost like you saw it in a dream, or you remember seeing it somewhere. This kind of sense of nostalgia, which I think ties in with where the visuals ended up being. And I think it does connect with the sound, even though we didn't set out with those visuals in mind at the beginning. I think those textures kind of happened. It really made sense when we started going down this route of like, we wanted lots of the visual vibes to really feel like maybe you'd seen them before, but you don't know where, or you've seen them before, but they look a bit off. Or like, why are Julie and Stephen on the box for Connect 4? It's Connect 4, but it's wrong.
Is making as we're kind of like alluding to here, kind of like trying to, I guess, have an evocation of nostalgia. I mean, is that difficult when you have potentially multi generations listen to your music, in the sense that you know, I think there was a time where perhaps everyone had kind of common reference points in terms of what they remember from their childhood. But I wonder now, does that change as kind of new generations come along, or has things kind of remained the same? I mean, I wonder, is that kind of like something you consider in terms of like uh, who are the people that are going to, I guess, kind of relate to this kind of iconography? I don't know.
I think that's where the sentiment of what you put out really needs to be genuine, because we're living in this very strange time where like 10 years ago it would have taken so much more budget and technology and time to make the kinds of things that we can make now. And like the nostalgia factor of everything right now, I think it's quite cheapened by the fact that everything is so accessible, and it's such an amazing array of tools that we can work with. But at the same time, you can end up just putting stuff out there that looks and feels and sounds like, oh, I get what you're going for there. You're going for that 90s thing. And that's like, it is what it is. But I think when you're looking at that as the creative backdrop that we're in right now, which is like, it's a horror show of just like, you can churn out so much content, and I hate that word so much. I think it just meant that the challenge was like really write something that meant something genuine to us, that we were really, really happy with, and not overthink the idea that people might get it, because I think you can get really wrapped up in this day and age of like what's gonna get clicks, and I don't know, I think for something like that to ring true to people, which it seems to be, I think it has to come from a really genuine creative place first and foremost.
I think as well, because myself and Julie are around the same age, that we're coming from a point of being like close enough to the last generation that had a kind of homogenized culture that we could absorb
Mm-hmm.
when we were young. You know what I mean? So like,
Yeah.
we've definitely found that we have all the same kind of references for songs and for things we've seen as kids and things we've done, because there wasn't as much there to do. There wasn't as many options or
Yeah.
whatever, you know. So like what you're saying, Aaron, about it being difficult, I think it's going to get more and more and more difficult, because it's way more to genuinely project nostalgia or reference it or whatever. Because like for kids now, there's every chance that they're, you know, even in a friend group, some are totally obsessed with one thing and totally obsessed with another, and they're not
Totally.
crossing, you know. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you kind of only had, you know, top 30 hits and top of the pops and whatever the radio as reference, as
Yeah.
like where you got your new music from as a kid, you kind of all heard the same stuff, so you have a lot of the same references. But that's definitely changed big
Yeah.
time now.
Yeah.
Big time. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if I'm such like a disastrous thinker that sometimes I kind of wonder, is that kind of this is a topic for another day, I guess, but sometimes I wonder, is that going to kind of perpetuate the sense of atomization a lot of people are talking about now, if we don't have those kind of shared, I guess, kind of I don't know, common facets in our life or something.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Definitely could do. It definitely could. It's really weird, you know, like especially there was a few months ago, you know, when Taylor Swift brought out the latest album, and she had, was it like 7 songs in the top 10 Billboard or
Yeah,
something like that? I hadn't heard any of them. I
yeah,
think I still haven't, you know. That couldn't have happened like when I was a kid. You couldn't escape the most popular
Yeah.
songs because they'd be everywhere. But it's, yeah, it's crazy. So some people like can be huge for some sections of the population, then just uh, non-existent. You know, it's really strange, and it could definitely lead to that, people being separated a bit. Hopefully not.
We're all gonna be one man idol soon. As independent artists, you find that that kind of sense of decentralization is kind of beneficial or intimidating, in the sense that, you know, there is so much stuff kind of like vying for your attention. There's so much stuff kind of in the pool of creativity and just kind of
Mm.
out there in terms of self-releasing, that um it can be difficult to, you know, really make a mark. Or do you find that if the art is, as you were kind of mentioning, sincere, and if it's done with a genuine passion and love, that eventually will find its audience, even if it's not kind of like immediate? Or how do you feel about that, I guess?
I don't love where we're at in terms of um I don't think we're quite built for it.
Hmm.
Just yet I feel like our brains are not ready for the way we consume media right now, or the way we'll consume media in 5 years. It's just all happened so fast. And I'm not saying in principle that the access to it is incredible. Like the things you can do is that's amazing. I just wonder about, especially given the news over the past year and the way you can flip from, I get these like home recipe videos and then it's followed by just like awful images from around the world. And I do find it, I'm fascinated to know what that's kind of doing to our brains right now. And then you asked as well just about the amount of music and making a mark. Again, we're living in a time in terms of streaming where so little of that revenue goes back to the artists that I find it difficult to be passionate about the music industry in that sense. Not necessarily about the music scene or about music itself. Thank God, I still love music. And I think we're finding a language maybe a few years into the Spotify universe that is more about kind of supporting each other in music communities and maybe the kick up the ass of coming out of the pandemic and being like, okay, we need to protect what we have. But it's really, really difficult, both on like a really personal level in terms of how you live your life and also how you kind of approach your career as an artist. I think it's really, really tough, and I don't know what the future is going to look like. Not for us. We'll keep making music and everything, but just like generally speaking, as an industry, I don't know how it's going to look in a few years. I'm interested to see if some good people with some money in their back pockets would be able to help us fix the beast of music.
Well, one thing, like I remember during the pandemic, like people were so starved of like live music, and I think people really found appreciation for like live music and for the preservation of music venues. Of course, around that time, a lot of venues like the Tivoli and Francis Street, for example, and a lot of other places were kind of closing or they're being replaced by apartments and things like that. And I think people were kind of like there was the threat to the cobblestone in Smithfield as well, and people were really enforced about that. But I suppose wonder if now after the COVID-19 pandemic, things have seemingly kind of stabilized a bit, and people are getting a bit comfortable with kind of the situation as it is now. I wonder will kind of apathy creep in for what we said we wouldn't take for granted at one point,
Probably.
It might do, yeah. It's probably yeah. It's funny though. It is so true about the pandemic, about people valuing not just live music, but even any kind of artistic creation that they consume. Like whether it was television series or podcasts, radio, music, everything. Everyone's just like, oh my God, I never realized how important this stuff is for keeping me sane. And now people can't make it because there's a shortage. Oh my God. So I think we're still there with the positivity wise, with the like people are really appreciating it. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to know. I wonder is the outrageous rise of ticket prices something to do with that as well? People are like, oh, everybody really, really wants to go to these gigs. Let's make them part ways with serious cash to do it. Like, I wonder. I don't know. I wonder is that a consequence of it too? That the appetite for live music now, probably post-pandemic, is so extreme and intense that like all these insanely priced gigs are still selling out many times over.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy, like the dynamic pricing thing you're kind of alluding to. I mean, like and just in general, I mean it seems like kind of even ticket price for kind of like mid-sized venues are really getting kind of like almost exclusionary, I would say. In some ways, I mean, like I think that's probably a benefit to local artists too, in the sense that if you're kind of competing in like a city like Dublin where there's like so much stuff vying for your attention. I mean, potentially having kind of cheaper ticketed shows can be beneficial. But then also, I mean, like sometimes I see like lineups with like 3 to 5 like really good local artists who are just amazing, and then you go and it's like half sold, and like tickets are like a fiver or 10 or something, and it's just like I don't know. It's very. It can seem quite demoralizing to see that, like people aren't really turning out for the local acts that are up and coming and that are really who I think, in my opinion, are kind of like equal in quality and scale to, a lot of touring artists,
Yeah, it's hard to know. What you said is so true, and it is confusing. It's a difficult one to align in your mind as to why that is the case. But I've definitely noticed, I've done quite a few over the last like 6 months of these small gigs with groups like CMYK. I don't know if you know them, and Arts Bubbles, another one I did last week. And I know Maria Kelly that I play with and is our label mate and friend. She's doing loads of living room shows,
Yeah.
and it's that seems to be an answer somewhat to the crazy ticket prices and people being unsure where to support music and how to do it, because all of those sell out all the time immediately. Like any of the gigs I've done, I did one last week and it was like rammed, you couldn't move. And I think there's definitely an appetite for people to have some kind of genuine up close experience that's very intimate like that, where it's literally you in a room with someone usually playing, acoustic guitar and singing their songs, and people love it. And the people like when I'm playing it, I loved it. It's so intense, like I literally had someone sitting on my foot playing the other night, and I was like, oh my God, what's happening here? But so I think maybe those kind of things are an answer. You kind of build communities in those situations, and there does seem to be an appetite for that, which is reassuring. People want the genuine musical experience.
I think it's a real skill to like earning the trust of an audience that wants to kind of come back for more. And it's for me, there's definitely been a shift of attitude of like kind of take your time and do fewer gigs and do the ones you really want to do. And likewise with other events like CMYK, and I'd even say like Sconra, which is a Samhain event that I run. There's a sense of like, okay, we want to be really specific about what we're good at and do it well and not overdo it, and really let the audience know that this is like, we know what you like, and we're not going to, like, what I find really interesting with CMYK is actually so much of it is not like online. You don't necessarily see many videos or like things on their Instagram about what they do. People just trust and will turn up for that. And I think that's like this in this day and age, that's so difficult, because a lot of people kind of feel like most 90% of their brand, or whatever you call it, it has to be online. And to be able to earn the trust of people who will just turn up and see you in person is amazing. But yeah, like I definitely feel like there's a lethargy out there in terms of venues in the UK are also really struggling. That would be typically where my own band would go over to tour. And the last time we toured, rather than trying to kind of do the length and breadth of the UK, we were really picky about where we were going to play. We did a really select tour, and with that we put like twice as much time into kind of getting to know the promoters and promoting them well, and it was nice. We felt we had way more energy coming back from that tour than from maybe other tours where we had tried to do twice as many shows. But yeah, I'm only really offering up my perspective there as like a touring artist, in terms of like, how can you deal with this situation that we're in right now, where you want to play and you want to connect with your audience, but the appetite is like really hard to read. That's certainly how I'm doing things, and I think I'm seeing other kind of independent promoters and collectives of bands in Dublin doing the same thing, where they're like curating nights that people will want to come back to.
Yeah, actually, before you joined, Julie, me and Stephen were kind of talking about how he kind of balances his schedule, and I was wondering, for both of you, I mean, do you find now that you're both quite seasoned in terms of like, you've been doing this for a while, you kind of know the ropes a little bit, and you were kind of mentioning there about being selective about your UK tour. I mean, do you find that you guys have gotten better at sort of knowing your limitations and knowing kind of how not to burn out and make yourself sick and do too much? Or is that something that you find is perpetually a learning experience? Because obviously people's kind of obviously people can get into it, I think, a pattern and get kind of familiar with their limitations, but then you know, circumstantially, people's like things can kind of get thrown into the mix a little bit that we can't predict as well. So, yeah, I was wondering, do you find you're now in a place where you find like you could kind of give advice about those things, or again, is it too idiosyncratic to be able to do that?
I thought you were about to speak. I talk about this a lot. That's why I was like, maybe Stephen would like to. Yeah, like I think I could probably get a pretty steady job in BIM talking about burnout at this rate, because I've gone through so many phases of being like, okay, this year I'm gonna get the balance just right. And I have got all these learnings from last year. And like I've done panels about, you know, being a self-managed musician and leaning on your whoever your fellow creatives that are around you. And like I think there's my bottom line in approaching that, this is self-made, the panels that I used to co-run with a friend of mine, Joanna. My bottom line there was like, wow, music really, really involves you having to wear so many different hats, and it's really not what you would have expected when you were watching Top 30 Hits. Like, I think you just thought you could get the outfits and turn up and do the gigs and have the party after, and there's just it's totally different ball game now. And I think my principle around any of those panels that we used to do and those events that we used to run, they were always so refreshing, because we approached them saying, like, we know you're not good at everything, we're not good at everything, so like being a bit more humble about what you can expect from yourself has been something that I've learned over the last few years. Because you just, unless you are really exceptionally multi-talented and lucky, it's really difficult to kind of be good at all the things you need to balance in order to like do your music career and take care of yourself, and also have a social life, and probably also have a day job, which a lot of people have. So yeah, like every year is I'm learning something new. And that's also because even in those last few years that I've been making music, the industry has also changed. Like I went to a panel recently, and I will continue to go to Ireland Music Week. There's always something there for me to learn, but find myself not going back to the exact same panels. And this year I was like, I'm going to go to a TikTok one. And I don't really live on TikTok. Like, I think it's an incredible platform, but I just got there slightly too late, and it just, I was like, okay, maybe I don't need this, it's fine. And even to do well on TikTok, the amount of skills and time, like especially time and discipline, you need to make that work. Like I hugely respect anyone who takes on that level of work, but it was also really nice sitting there being like, I don't think I want to do this. And that's fine. It was real. Like, I was like, what's this voice I'm hearing in the back of my mind?
I had the exact same experience at that same
other people
TikTok
doing
actually.
Yeah.
Like,
but then at the same time, because I really don't want to sound like a hypocrite, or I'm going to sound like a hypocrite, that's actually, I will spend 2-3 weeks perfecting a music video, which I know is like not necessarily relevant to where music is going. Like, I will have my hyperfixations and the things that I put loads and loads of time into. So I'm not knocking the folks who put lots of time into TikTok. But I was like, I think I can't do everything, and this is not like, it's really not something that I'm leaning towards. Like, maybe that's okay, and maybe that will change, but I don't think it's going to change.
No, that's fair. I mean, I think like yeah, people need to, I don't know, it's a difficult thing where people kind of like need to know kind of limitations and kind of what, you know, have realistic expectations, but also at the same time not get complacent. It's very weird, and it's a huge tangent, and I'll try not to go down. Let's talk about PostLast. And so if I'm getting the chronology correct, Stephen, just based on what you were saying, the music that you kind of initially created that you sent to Julie, I mean, was this after BARQ had split, or was that project still going?
Oh no, it was well after. Yeah, it was probably a couple of years after, I'd say. Because I kind of just had the thought, and then a load of songs came in a burst. So I had basically nothing to offer in terms of songs, and I just, as soon as I made the decision to start doing it, I was like, okay, more, and do loads. So it was a good bit after we stopped playing in BARQ. I'm struggling to think of the actual years and timelines now, but I think BARQ, we decided to split before the pandemic, but we still had music to come out, so that kind of came out in 2020. But we were already kind of finished, and I say I started writing on the music for this, even though I didn't know what this was, in 2023, was it, Julie? I'm not sure.
2022, no?
Was it?
End of 22.
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah. Just before Christmas, was it?
Yeah.
That's
But
right.
that was just, it was all in theory.
That was just a chat to like,
it was theoretical.
Let's try it out and see how it goes.
Yeah.
I think we were both, lots of what you're talking about, Aaron, about the like knowing what to work with and what to say no to, and burnout and all those things. I think that was on both our minds when talking about it. Like, as in, you know, and I think once we talked about like, will we, blah, blah, I was like, let's just try it and we'll find out pretty quickly whether it's a go or not, because if we're both enjoying it, then we'll keep doing it. But if it's like stress and whatever, then you know, we won't do it. So we started and it was fun and it went well. So
well, initially started quite remotely from what you're saying. Is the project now done remotely, or is it done in collaboration in close quarters, or what's that kind of like? What's the proximity, I guess, like, you know?
I think usually I'll write something like, as in you know, a full arrangement of a song as best I can, kind of imagining and wondering what the vocals might be. I'll get it to as far as I can, upload it to a drive, and then Julie has a look at those sounds, adds vocals to it, and sends it back to me. And then I listen to that, start making changes with that, send it back to her, and then she makes more changes, more suggestions, more everything, send it back to me. And then once it's at that point of like, we've both been kind of messing with it separately, it's a good time to meet up and be in the same room and do it. Because then that's definitely when you get the like immediacy of bouncing off ideas each other, you know, because someone say, well, what about this thing? You're like, oh yeah, that, okay, let's try something. And you know, it works well that way, I think. But it's good. I think it's probably partially because we both have busy schedules and stuff. You're kind of getting to it when you can, so it's actually hard to schedule times when we're both free at the same time. So it's good to, you know, we can do our parts separately initially and then meet up to get it to where we're happy that it's a finished song, you know.
I think we get the best out of each other that way, because it's hard to write. Well, some people can do this, but I find it hard to just straight up write in the same room as somebody else. But I find it very easy to be like, how about this? How about this?
Yeah.
So once we get the songs to about 90%, there's a different energy that we bring to the table when we then meet up and actually work on the songs. And it'll be just like these gas little ideas that actually end up putting a real stamp on the song. But that's kind of maybe us in production mode more so than us in straight up writing mode.
Yeah, it's interesting kind of I think blend of the two. It's I think like a lot of artists now who are working remotely is I think they're seeing like the and I think maybe Stephen, you'd probably relate this, the idea of like production as kind of an extension of the songwriting arm rather than something that's kind of separate from it. Yeah, I mean, I wonder, like, it seems like from this project that those two things don't necessarily have the clear, I guess, chronology of like you start with songwriting, you write a song, and then you do the production and the mixing. It seems like from what you're saying that it's kind of a little up in the air. It's a little less clear than that, if that's correct.
Definitely, yeah. I think it's I think it's similar to what Julie was saying about having all the access to technology for making videos and stuff like that. Everyone has access to so much technology for making music as well, that you can get it pretty far along in terms of production and sounds and what you're going for at home yourself. That it definitely is part of the songwriting process, that you kind of, you know, whether intentionally or unintentionally, you'll end up getting it to sound a certain way. It's not kind of like how it would be where you're, you know, years ago where you kind of would have had to do that it'd be post-production, you know, you go in and record your parts and then you're thinking it's definitely now it's part of the process for sure. And it's probably a technological thing, you know, people can do it at home to a high level, so they do.
Perfect. I'll try not to take up too much of your time. I just want to ask Julie one question. When it comes to actually the lyrics that you write for PostLast, how do they kind of differ from the kind of lyrics you'd write for Hawk? Do you have kind of a conscious because I think the performance is quite different and they're quite distinct, but in terms of the actual lyrical content, do you have consideration for making it distinct from Hawk, or is that something you don't consider? You just kind of like let whatever naturally sounds right come out, or what's that kind of
Yeah,
relationship?
there's a different personality for sure, and that it was a really, really nice thing to kind of discover. I think with Hawk, there's like an abrasive, straight talking, certainly like at times more political as well. Hawk can be like a big vent sometimes in terms of an outlet musically, and it's great to have. Like the louder we get, the more I'm getting off my chest. And then there's also, yeah, I think there's also like a set kind of amount of myself that I put on the table in there with Hawk. Like you can see a lot of me in there, you can see a lot of Matt in those lyrics as well. And with PostLast, it felt like a really nice chance to reset and kind of explore parts of my own. Like I would have actually started off as a folk writer. So it was really nice to kind of go back to being a little bit more dreamlike in terms of lyrics. And in Hawk, you're very much seeing me on my most this is what I've got to say day. And maybe in PostLast, you're hearing me on my kind of like, this is where my brain meanders off to sometimes. And would you like to go on a little adventure? And I think that the lyrics take on like, it's like characters for me. I think there's so much of my own very specific parts of my personality in Hawk that it's been really nice to just let other parts of myself come out and give them characters, kind of like cartoonify them a little bit and have a bit more artistic license in terms of how to express that.
It's very interesting that the kind of like the music that's surrounding what you're writing kind of dictates whether something is a bit more abstract and whether something's a bit more kind of literal and direct. Like again, is that something that just kind of naturally, as you're listening to kind of say the more aggressive music of Hawk, the kind of just kind of what you, as you mentioned, kind of have vent up and what you want to kind of express just kind of comes out in full force like that, or how conscious and subconscious are those decisions?
Um, they're a bit more conscious now. They were happening kind of more subconsciously at the beginning when I was kind of figuring out like what's the tone and what's the world we're building around the music we're making. But now actually I feel like I know I have license. I can follow that train of thought. I can dare to kind of push those lyrics a little bit further. And actually myself and Matt have been writing new Hawk material, and I really think it's made me more confident going back to the other stuff as well. So like getting a chance to have a totally different writing outlet, I think it's always good. Like I write during the day for my day job as well, and I write a lot because I might be, say, working on this Sconra event, we have to kind of come up with little spooky stories, and I'm just finding myself much more confident to like really tell a story at any given chance.
Yep.
So when you take yourself out of your usual box and give yourself entirely new kind of constraints to work in, I just think it's really, you can learn an awful lot, and I'm seeing the real fruits of that come through, not just in working on like new PostLast stuff, but like everything that I write.
That's great. I mean, like, because I do think like the writing that people do it is kind of like a muscle that like the more you kind of exercise it, the stronger it becomes. And I think obviously you get a lot more confident with those things in terms of the more you do it, kind of like, and also I'm sure like in terms of writing, but also in terms of like editing, kind of being able to kind of preemptively kind of edit too, if that makes sense, where it's
Yeah,
kind of like I know.
absolutely. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And it's funny because like I think sometimes in music, especially, I do think that like you will meet a lot of singers and lyricists who are self-taught, whereas you will meet a lot of musicians that maybe have a bit more like set framework where they're coming from in terms of how they've been taught to play. And I think sometimes the kind of downside to having that poetic role is that there's this feeling like that it should be innate to you, and that maybe like working on it is below you, or I certainly have resisted it in the past. It's like, but I'm actually really seeing that like these, you know, you can get better at these things.
Oh, totally. I think the other kind of like the other problem can sometimes be having kind of a set kind of correct way of being creative, and I think that can also be very jeopardizing to the authenticity of art and to music and to writing
Yeah,
too. So.
yeah, yeah.
Final thing I'll talk about is your new EP, Pull Me Into the Open. So, what I think is very interesting is, your previous single, Mitson, had, it was a 4-track kind of release of kind of all the singles that have been released so far. The EP has the 2 additional tracks, Headlands and Halloween. What I really think is very interesting about this is how the placement of the songs differs. And I was wondering, like, how conscious kind of like making how conscious are you guys of making like a collective piece in terms of knowing the placement of each song, and why did you kind of elect to uh rearrange the songs as you did for the EP versus the previous single?
Yeah,
So,
it's hard to yeah, no, go on, Julie.
Sorry,
Yeah.
that was too lofty.
no,
No, no,
not at all.
not at all.
It's funny because the order you're seeing the tracks on Spotify at the moment is just the order they were released in.
For
You're always
Mizzen, yeah,
seeing
yeah.
you're always seeing the most recent one. And this is the thing of like it
It's
just
saying like
comes back how, yeah, it
reverse
comes back
chronological,
to
yeah.
how like music has changed, because I would have been thinking of this EP as like, oh, the art of how you place the songs is really important to the listening experience. But I never even considered the fact that people are listening to this in a different order right now. No, until you just said it now.
Yeah.
I hadn't even considered that.
So,
Yeah, it's so hard to know. Do people, the majority of people kind of listen playlists and singles,
Yeah.
play their own playlists or Spotify playlists, whatever. And like I definitely still listen to albums. I really like doing that. Like just put on the album, listen to the whole way through. Like that's generally how I do it the most. But then having said that, for our own music, like I definitely wouldn't be, if Julie or anyone felt really strongly, oh, you should definitely have it in this order, I'd be like, it's okay, because like I don't know that people are going to listen to it in that order anyway,
Mm,
so it's maybe not that important, which is maybe not the right way to think about it, seeing as it's exactly how I enjoy listening to it, so I
yeah.
should probably think about it more. But yeah, it's definitely a thing that track placement and stuff, yeah, it's a bit less tangible when it's all streaming and you're
mm.
probably hearing the music for the first time on a playlist or something anyway, so.
Yeah, I mean, like, do you have consideration, for example, if you're making an EP or even a full-length album, of having some kind of like connective tissue, even if it's just like, say, some kind of like soundscape that weaves between the songs that kind of like adds a continuity to it, or again, is sort of having your songs be kind of conscious of being released as singles? Is that something that takes consideration too? Yeah, I mean, like, what's, I guess, kind of your relationship in terms of like making collective music versus individual singles?
Yeah, good question. I'm not
Sorry.
sure. I know. Well, I know that if you're a really big artist expecting millions or hundreds of millions of streams on your song, then it's well worth your while to put in some audio glue between the songs. That once it's above 30 seconds, it qualifies as a full song, and so you will get royalties for those streams on that 30 seconds, which is obviously a lot easier to do on a 30-second just slips by thing, and they add
Yeah.
up, but
Mm.
we're not quite there yet.
Enough.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much. I guess the final thing I'll ask is, obviously the singles out, sorry, the EP rather is out 24th. I'll try and get this up for them. And just in general, I mean, what can kind of people expect from PostLast? Or do you have any shows or anything you want to plug after the EP is out?
I got some
Well,
bits and pieces.
Okay.
Bits and pieces in the works still around these existing tracks, actually. We've got a video that we made recently for one of the EP tracks that comes out around Halloween, for reasons that will be really obvious when the EP comes out.
Okay.
And
I think I know which song.
yeah.
You can guess, you can guess.
And
We also
then
did
we've
a
also been
we did a lyric
working.
video as well
Oh yeah,
for
yeah.
Headlands. I think the lyrics and Headlands are my favorite of the songs that we've done so far. So I was very pushing for like, "Oh, this one needs a lyric video. It needs its moment for the lyrics to shine." So
Yeah.
we did that as well. So that'll be coming out soon. And
We've been looking at remixes as well, and that's something that we're going to come back to in the new year and hopefully have a little bit, give a little bit of a different perspective on the existing tracks. And in the meantime, we're just writing, looking at new material for next year. And we haven't, so we came back to the idea of playing live a few times, and I think, given what we were saying already about kind of creating an experience for people that we really, really want them to enjoy, and we didn't feel ready to do gigs, mostly on a practical level. I think we were both very, very busy. But we certainly didn't want to just shoehorn a kind of half version of these tracks onto a stage. Like, I think we hear all these layers that really make the songs what they are. And if we were going to do them, it would be like with a big gang of people we trust on the stage with us. So it's something we're going to come back to. So I'd say watch this space, but it'll be something we come back to in 2025.
Thanks very much for your time, guys. I've really enjoyed talking with you, and
Yeah,
best
you
luck
too,
with
Aaron.
the EP. Best luck with everything you have coming up.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
you too. Thanks a mil. Thanks a mil. I love the vibe on the website and everything. It's like,
Thanks very
it's
much.
refreshing.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
class.
no, honestly, it's refreshing to get like people be like, so obviously you have another job as well, and it's really hard to do all. And you're like, yeah, it is great. God,
You
people
know,
this stuff.
my favorite thing to ask musicians is, what's your day job? Like, I love asking them. So what do you, what's your secret job?
Yeah. Cool.
Well, I also think it's interesting too, because I remember last time I interviewed you, Julie, you were kind of mentioned how your day job as a copywriter, kind of like actually you were able to kind of incorporate that into the music you're doing. I think that's like fascinating too, when
Yeah.
stuff you kind of do to make a living actually kind of benefits your art too.
Yeah, it's great on a practical level, and it's great on a self-esteem level, because all of a sudden I'm not like kind of mentally pushing aside this other whole profession that I have. I'm actually being like, oh no, I'm good at this other thing. It's
Yeah.
okay, just because it's not like something I would post about on Instagram. It doesn't mean
You're not Hannah Montaning it. It's all related.
exactly. Yeah, that was a really tough life back when I was Hannah Montana.
Thanks very much, guys.
Cool.
Enjoy
Thanks,
the rest of
man.
the day.
Aaron.
Really like that.
Good luck. See you later.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us. Bye.
Absolutely. Bye. Thank you for listening to that episode of Post-Burnout.com interviews. We're an independent venture run by yours truly, and as I said at the beginning, liking, rating, subscribing, and sharing really helps us out a lot. If you're feeling extra generous, we do have a PayPal donation link in the episode description, but don't feel obligated, of course. We've also begun releasing occasional exclusive episodes on Spotify, so subscribe there if you'd be interested in hearing those. Thanks again for listening, and see you next time.